What would you do if the very child you sacrificed your entire life for looked you in the eye and told you his calendar was more important than your survival? This isn't a story about money. It isn't even about health. It's about betrayal, the kind that cuts deeper than any wound, because it comes from your own blood. And it's about how a father, broken but not defeated, chose to reclaim his dignity when the world thought he was too old to fight. My name is Walter. I'm 68 years old, a retired steel mill worker from a small town in Indiana. My mornings are quiet now, coffee steaming on the porch, the sound of a train in the distance, the ache in my knees reminding me of years that took more than they gave. On my kitchen wall hang faded photographs, my late wife, my son Jason as a boy, and me in my work uniform. Every wrinkle on my face carries the weight of sacrifice, and yet, I never imagined the cruelest scar would come from the one I loved most. For 42 years I poured sweat and bone into the steel mill, double shifts, holidays missed, lungs blackened from dust. I worked while my back screamed, while my hands split open from cold metal. Why? So my boy could go to college, so he wouldn't live the life I did. Jason became everything I wasn't: slick suits, polished shoes, meetings in glass towers. I thought I'd raised him well, but somewhere along the way, success hardened him. He started dismissing me, little by little. "Dad, you wouldn't understand how the world works now," he'd say, rolling his eyes when I asked about his job. I swallowed it, thinking maybe that's just how generations are, but the truth stung. Respect had turned to pity, pity into annoyance. The last straw came when he stopped visiting altogether, blaming his packed schedule. Birthdays passed without a call. My porch stayed quiet. Still, I never held it against him. I thought, when the day comes, he'll be there. He'll remember who stood behind him when no one else did. I was wrong. It happened on a gray afternoon. My chest tightened while I was sweeping the porch. I collapsed against the railing, heart hammering like a drum. My hands shook as I dialed Jason. "Dad, what is it?" I'm about to walk into a meeting, his voice sharp, impatient. "Son," I gasped, I think something's wrong. I need you." He cut me off. "Can you wait? This presentation could change my career. Call an ambulance." "Okay, I'll check in after." The phone went silent. I sat there, struggling to breathe, staring at the family photos through the screen door. 42 years of sacrifice, and my son chose his schedule over his father's life. I survived that day, but something inside me didn't. When I left the hospital, I made a choice. No more begging for scraps of respect. If Jason thought age made me weak, he was about to learn what decades of endurance teach a man. I didn't shout. I didn't confront him. Instead, I moved quietly, like I did all those years on the factory floor. I met with my lawyer, updated my will, and shifted my savings into trusts that bypassed him completely. I contacted old union friends, men who remembered what I gave, and shared my story. And I planned for the moment when Jason's arrogance would meet my truth. He thought he knew everything, but I knew patience, and patience is the weapon of men who've already survived storms. It didn't take long before Jason noticed. The emails started first, then phone calls, one after another. "Dad, what's going on? I heard you changed the will. Why would you do that, after everything I've done?" Everything he'd done. The words made me laugh bitterly. Then came the angry texts, the midnight voicemails. His voice cracked not with concern, but with desperation. Meanwhile, I sat calmly on my porch, sipping coffee, listening to cicadas. He was frantic. I was steady. For the first time in years, the balance had shifted. And deep down, I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about teaching him the one lesson he never learned, that a man's worth isn't measured by his schedule, but by his character. The moment came at the town's annual church fundraiser. They were honoring me that night for decades of service and sacrifice. Jason showed up in his tailored suit, smiling for cameras, shaking hands. He thought he'd bask in the glow of being the supportive son. When they handed me the microphone, I looked at the crowd, my neighbors, old co-workers, the people who carried me through life, and then I told the truth. I spoke of the afternoon I nearly died, And the call I made to my son, I repeated his words aloud. Can you wait? This presentation could change my career. The room went silent, gasps, heads turned toward Jason, his smile vanished, his face pale. For the first time, everyone saw the man behind the suit, not a son, not a caretaker, just selfish ambition. And I walked off that stage to the sound of applause. Jason left in humiliation that night. The whispers followed him. In our small town, respect is everything, and once it's gone, it doesn't come back. As for me, I found peace, not because I hurt him, but because I stood tall again. Now I sit on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun dip behind the cornfields. The air smells like cut grass, the church bells ring in the distance. A man's worth isn't measured by the titles his children hold, but by the dignity he refuses to surrender, and mine, I reclaimed. Betrayal from your own blood cuts the deepest, but sometimes, standing up for your dignity is the sweetest revenge of all. Have you ever sacrificed everything, only to be forgotten? Share your story in the comments, I'll read every word. And if my story moved you, subscribe, more truths await.